let's do it.
Hey everybody, it's Dave here and Darren from the Great White North, which is still not white yet, correct?
Yeah, I think we got about a couple of weeks.
Couple weeks?
No. Like late October. It'll
Late
be
October.
The snow will arrive and we'll be whitish, and the lakes will start freezing, and we'll be wearing winter coats.
Uh-huh.
So a little while yet.
And that's when you get to play with the polar bears, right?
No polar bears around here, Dave.
No?
They're above the this isn't polar bear territory. Much further north. There are lots of polar bears in like the Hudson Bay area, which is not anywhere near here, which is much further south than here. But it's just that the way that's the polar bear range.
Mm-hmm.
They do not, even though we've got polar bear souvenirs up the yin yang around here. there's a big stuffed polar bear in the Yellowknife Airport, but no polar bears come around here. Lots of black bears.
Okay.
I saw a couple on the highway a couple of weeks ago. Mama bear and her cub bear crossing the highway. Hadn't seen a couple of black bears in a while, and I was glad that I did not run into them on a hike, because the mama bear would not have been very kind to me.
No, she wouldn't. They're good eating, by the way. For those
I've never had,
but they also think you're good eating if you cross them.
Yes, yeah. If they're hungry, or if you come upon mama bear and her cubs,
mm-hmm.
then it's a problem. Yeah. But grizzlies. Sometimes the grizzlies have a range here too. Not as common, but they do sometimes show up.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of other wildlife too. And but that's got nothing to do with the Vikings.
No. But speaking of bearing it.
Yes.
We have Mike Zimmer, who gets frustrated with injuries, and we've had a few. This week we had Justin Jefferson, who got landed on by Bashaud Breeland and reportedly had a sprained AC joint in his shoulder. Now, it's supposedly day to day, but I'm cool with him sitting out the rest of preseason and being ready for
Yep.
week one. And for some other players, it literally is day to day. Others, it's a few weeks, 2, 3, 4 weeks, depending on how bad it was. And reports are that it wasn't bad at all, which is a good thing. Yes.
Yeah.
The Vikings dodging a big bullet there. Then there's other players that are injured. We have Anthony Barr, who's been out for 3 days now. First day he was out, he was Veterans Day off. Then he played the next day a little bit. And then he's been out 2 days in a row, and everybody's like, what in the world's going on with Anthony Barr? We do not know if it's an injury or not. We hope it's not. Then there's Adam Thielen, who's been taking it easy because he supposedly has a leg injury of some sort. I heard bruised thigh or something relatively minor. He's not going to miss any game time.
Yeah.
But then there is the one player that Zimmer got visibly frustrated over during his press conference. And he said, 1 step forward, 2 step back. And that was Christian Darrisaw. Darrisaw had core surgery down near the groin area, core muscles. Basically, it's what do they call it? Where the muscle busts through the casing. And he had it repaired, but he has not since gotten back to full speed where they trust him enough to put him in full team drills. He'll do individual drills, but he's not in full team drills. Your question that you wanted to talk about is, why does Mike Zimmer get so frustrated over injuries? Tell me.
Well, I think there's. I was thinking about it a bit more, Dave, and I think that you have to separate the injury aggravation with Zimmer. It seems like, because I remember a few years back, I think it was 2016 or so, he made the old Parcells thing, can't make the club in the tub, about mac and cheese, Mac Alexander nursing some injuries that Zimmer did not seem to think were serious enough for him to be not out there practicing and playing. But what I was thinking about was that I noticed that he doesn't seem to call out the veterans all that much. But if you're a rookie and you're nursing injuries like Darrisaw is right now, then he gets pissed a bit more. So it could, and we know that at least my feeling is that Zimmer is not all that trusting of rookies anyway. He tends to bring them along slowly, unless they obviously are all world. And like even Jefferson took 3. It wasn't until the third game that he was starting. Right. Third or fourth game last year, which seems ridiculous now when you look at what he put up after he became a starter. But I think Zimmer just seems to have a low tolerance with rookies, and when it comes to injuries, we don't know. Maybe he's annoyed because the timing of Darrisaw's surgery in the off season, and felt that he could have got this stuff rectified earlier, or maybe this stuff wasn't revealed or found out during their vetting of Darrisaw. We don't know about those sort of things, but I wonder. We'll probably talk about the Zimmer and comments when we get to Cousins in a little while, because, I feel a bit sheepish because we've been saying, Zimmer doesn't say anything anymore at the conferences. He just always gives the same answers. We got to play better. Why couldn't he speak more frankly? Now he's speaking frankly about injuries, and now I'm crapping on him for doing that. But I don't know if I don't know what the upside is for a coach to call out a player about injuries. You and I do not know how hard Darrisaw or how hard he's going at rehab or what he's doing. Like, is he messing around? He doesn't seem like that kind of a player.
No, or just how bad, what the issue is.
Yeah.
We know,
But if you're injured, you're injured.
Generally, yes.
Now, again, never been in a pro sports team. We don't know all the things that go on behind the scenes, how much pressure there is to play. There's got to be a lot of pressure to play. We don't know how much players are pressured to play, and what the severity of the injury has to be for the coaches to accept that they cannot play. And we don't know how much that plays in the mind of players, like how much pressure they feel to actually go on the field if they're not really able to do so.
There's the old saying that playing hurt is one thing, playing injured is a completely other. And the question is he hurt? Has he not fully healed? I mean, end of last season was January.
Yeah.
You would think he was healed enough by now. Or, is he actually injured? And if that's the case, what are they doing to fix it? And is putting him out there for team drill or for individual drills slowing that progress? Should they keep him out even longer? And that's a question. I don't know. I can see why Zimmer gets frustrated because he's supposed to have these guys available. He wants Darrisaw to get in there and compete for that left tackle's job.
So do we.
The left tackle. Yeah, we do too. And it's frustrating to him that he cannot do that. And I fully understand that. It's frustrating to me too. I want to see him play that position. We haven't seen any live, 11-on-11 drills to evaluate him yet.
No, I think as a coach, again, Zimmer seems to pick his spots on who he's calling out publicly about these injury things, and his old mentor Bill Parcells used to do a lot of this too. With he'd send these messages out at press conferences, and Bill was, Bill had a plan. I think that he did those things purposely to send a message to people if he didn't feel that they were getting the message during practices from the other coaches. I think Zimmer, he talks a lot to Parcells still, and so there must be an influence there. I think in this case, though, it seemed like it was one of those things where Zimmer was just maybe there might have been a plan too, but he was also just frustrated. But I just don't see the upside to calling out rookies. You want to have a good relationship with these guys. You want them to work with you and to listen to you and to follow what you have to say. By kind of insinuating that maybe this guy is a pussy or a wimp, like he can't tough it out like a real man. I don't know if that's going to win you many brownie points with the player. Probably these things happen all the time in the regular season, and these players are probably used to it, and it's water off a duck's back. But we are seeing things like you see with the Simone Biles situation in the Olympics. You saw it with Naomi Osaka in the tennis at the Wimbledon, that now the mental health issues are starting to some players are bringing that up and saying, enough is enough. And these aren't I don't know what the situations were with Osaka or Biles, like whether there's coach pressure or whatever, but the whole pressure thing, I don't know if that's such a great thing. That's my only concern with it.
Well, Biles had a legitimate reason from what I hear. She gets what gymnasts called the twisties. And it's where when they go into the air and start tumbling and rolling and flipping and doing all the things gymnasts do, their mind and their equilibrium gets off, and it's not telling them the correct stuff, and they can literally crash into the mat and break their neck. It's probably similar to vertigo. It would be my guess. Ted Glover, if he was watching, could confirm that. It's a total disorientation thing, and which was legitimate. But when it first came out, they thought, this isn't good. Well, that is technically mental because it deals with the brain and movement, the inner ear, And if it's off, it could hurt you. Now the question is, are football players, do they suffer something similar? I would think concussions, right, would fall into that category. But a core injury, I mean, there's, hey, coach, it hurts. I can't do this, and then have the medical staff look at it. That's what they get paid for. Now, back in the day, players played through a lot more, and they'd get the shots and the whole works. And it was all part of the pressure.
They played under with a lot more and for a lot less.
Oh yes.
Yeah. I feel that we really, in Darrisaw's case, I don't know, again, why Zimmer does these things. I'm not really sure. He just gets frustrated, but I think that'd be something I'd want to talk to. I'm sure he has. I think that's something I'd want to keep private. And just say the usual messaging platitudes that he's working and trying to work it out, and then just leave it at that. I don't think there's anything that really to be gained by going out and saying the guy is, or insinuating that the guy is maybe dogging it a little bit. That's kind of how I took it, or that he's not tough enough. We don't know those things. I don't think that really helps your relationship with that player. And that's a pretty important relationship because he was your first overall pick in this year's draft and is a left tackle, which is one of the most important positions in professional football.
Mm-hmm. And we know the history with Sharif Floyd and what he did there. This just sounds like a repeat. And it's never good.
No, that's my feeling on it. At some point in time, if Darrisaw overcomes this, and I expect that he will, and he becomes the kind of player that we think that he is going to be, then the Vikings are going to be looking to lock him up for a long time after that. If Zimmer is still here, which is
questionable,
will that
Depends
be part of? Depends on success. It also, which could partly hinges on how well a guy like Darrisaw develops and plays. That's going to be a big part of the Vikings' offensive success in the next 4 to 5 years.
Catch 22, baby. Catch 22.
Do you want to have the fact that your starter rookie left tackle does not like the head coach who's there? Is that going to play a part in the contract and extension negotiations? I don't know how much of a big deal is it. Money usually is a bigger factor, and the state of the team, how good the team is, how comfortable the player feels in the situation in the city that they're playing in. But the coaching staff has to play a part in that too, as the New York Giants are finding out these days with everybody retiring. Yeah. But I don't know.
Yeah, but you take that and you take Mac Alexander. Mac Alexander fought Zimmer tooth and nail for the first 2 seasons, and eventually left, and then came back, said, "No, I was wrong. Zim was right," and wanted to come back. So there's both sides of that. Whether it's advantage, it depends on the individual personality. Whether calling them out in public is a motivating factor or not. Generally, you try to do everything behind the scenes. Praise in public. You correct in private is generally the way to go. And only if the corrections and the adjustments in private don't work do you see if something else will. Because if they don't work in private, you're not going to get them to work otherwise anyways, right? So you might as well take it, I see it as take it to, well, there's a reason you're supposed to be doing this, and you say that in public. You may not mention the person by name, but they get the hint, hopefully. If they don't get the hint, they shouldn't have been drafted in the first place. My opinion, because they don't have the upstairs to play the game. Now, linemen across the board are generally very, very smart individuals, and he should get it in private and not just, in public. And Zim, I think, did the wrong thing there. But let's talk about Zimmer and Kirk Cousins. We had a little controversy this week.
Yeah, it's Just a little one. This has been talked about probably on every Vikings video show podcast this week. That's run, and
Oh, it's made national. ESPN, Pro Football Talk, ABC, NBC, CBS, all of them have talked about it. ESPN, everybody has talked about it.
the so we saw yesterday or the day before that Cousins lost his partnership with the Michigan hospital that he'd been over. I think they called it his vaccine stance. Sorry, Dave, I didn't see all of his presser or anything, but I don't think he ever. I don't know if he. Yeah,
he managed to piss off everybody.
Yeah, well, and Kirk is sometimes good at that. Sometimes he gets people mad at him because he didn't say anything, and now he's got people mad at him because he said a lot of stuff. I'm gonna have a drink of I'm gonna have a drink of my strawberry smoothie here, but
no, but he is he managed. I mean, there's other starting quarterbacks that aren't vaccinated. Lamar Jackson. Is one of them.
Kirk Plexiglass Cousins.
Yeah, you got it, Jim. You got it. Yeah. Even made a cute little graphic for that, but I won't show it here because. Other quarterbacks have not been vaccinated, but you don't hear that it didn't blow up like it has with Kirk. Kirk did it. He blamed the whole situation on everything except for himself. And the room was too small. He was more than 6 feet away from Kellen Mond. And Jason asks, have we heard if Mond's back yet? No, I haven't heard anything.
Mond's got to be out 10 days, right?
Well, he's got to test negative 2 days in a row, I think it is.
Right, yeah. If you got COVID, you're not going to test negative.
Well, you will once you get over it. You'll get to a point where you test negative.
That's right.
But and Kirk was blaming he wasn't within 6 feet of Mond, but because the room size was too small, it keyed off, and that he didn't test negative or test positive the whole time he was out. You know, he had never missed 4 practices, this, that, and if anything, he's going to put plexiglass up. That's where the plexiglass comes from, plexiglass box, and if necessary, they're going to move to a bigger room, and if he has to, they'll move to have QB meetings under the goalpost on the practice field in January, right? But everything was everybody else's fault and not Kirk's. And that rubbed people wrong. The whole I didn't do it. You know, whether your stance is not to be vaccinated or vaccinated, right? It was that whole it's not my fault thing. And that rubbed everybody just raw across the board. And that's not good can't be good for the team. And he has not played well since he's been back. He's obviously under a lot of stress because, like you mentioned, he lost one of his sponsors over this, a hospital. And then he hasn't played well in the practices since. Now, my question to you is, how is this going to affect the season?
We were watching, maybe you did too, last night I was watching the Viking Report with their Gallhorn Facebook site mates, Ted Glover and Drew Budding, and Christopher Gates is on there, who runs the Daily Norseman site, of course, as most Viking fans know, and they were talking. Chris felt that it's not going to be an issue, and I feel like I tend to agree with him. These things are, it'll be here's what's going to happen. If the Vikings start off the season 3-0, it won't be an issue, and if they go 1-2 or 0-3, it's going to be a big issue. So And whether that has anything to do with the most entitled stance, Jim's like on fire here so far. The results on the field are going to eventually determine, I think,
Exactly.
how people perceive whether this is an issue or not. I kind of agree with Chris that it's not going to be an issue, or it shouldn't be an issue. What I hope has happened here is, for one thing, Zimmer again was earlier he talked about he is mad because the quarters I have quarterbacks who aren't vaccinated. He made a point of pointing out how smart Browning is for getting vaccinated, which was kind of hilarious to me anyway. And then later this week, of course, he said, I'm not going to talk about this anymore. I talked to Kurt. We had a good discussion. And, they obviously gave both sides. Cousins said why he's not getting vaccinated. And Zimmer was trying to tell him why he felt he should. You're not going to change Kirk Cousins' mind. This is the way it's going to be. The Vikings will have to make sure extra careful, as you say, that he's got plexiglass around him or whatever.
Put him in the bubble.
Put him in the bubble. But I think what I would like to see is, so Zimmer said he's not going to talk about it anymore, and that's probably, that would be the way I would handle it now too, because every team in the NFL, this is going to be an issue at some point that they're going to have to, probably going to have to deal with. It'll be a question that comes up, and if guys get COVID on the team and they have to miss a game, no matter what the position they are, as a team, you're going to have to answer to that. As a coach, you're going to have to answer to that. It's going to be a story. That's just the way it's going to be. Just like if somebody breaks their arm and they're out, right? You're going to have to answer to it.
You're going to have to answer. But the NFL right now is 90% vaccinated. The Vikings are the lowest at 64%. Some teams are near 100%. I think the Tampa Bay is one of those. Where it can get you is because the rules are so drastically different for those that are vaccinated and those that are not. Where it could get you is if you come into, rather than a Saturday night practice, you're coming into, say, Saturday and game days on Sunday, and then on Saturday night or Sunday morning, one of the unvax, Adam Thielen's one that we know of, Harrison Smith is speculated.
Harrison Smith
is another.
Well, yeah, I do.
But if your quarterback in particular, right, say it's, again, the quarterback room, and then you suddenly don't have any quarterbacks, right, like happened to Denver last year, the likelihood of you winning that game, right, and if enough people get it, you forfeit and don't get paid. But the likelihood of you winning that game just goes down the crapper, and that doesn't do well for the team when the team's goal is to make the Super Bowl, right? And to hopefully win the Super Bowl. Please, that should be their goal. We've gone 60 years without winning a Super Bowl. Let's not make it 61. Let's go and win that thing. And to do that, you've got to have all hands on deck, and you do everything possible to make sure all hands are available to be on deck. That's my heartburn over this. And it's not a personal thing or a political thing, or whether you're for or against it. It's a team thing as to what's best for the team. And that's what irritated me with him. Now,
I think what Dave, I hope has happened, or what I would like to see happen if it hasn't happened yet, is that they have the team has a meeting if it hasn't had it already, and a guy like Cousins calls it, or some of the other team leaders would call it. Now, some of those team leaders are Thielen and Hitman, who are, if they're not vaccinated, maybe that's kind of not the way I would want it to go.
But you heard Patrick Peterson say, oh, yeah, he got it. He had to get it because he wasn't going to let down the team.
Yeah, I just think that the team has to have you'd want to have a team meeting where these guys are explaining, okay, here's why I'm not vaccinated. Here are my reasons. Have the team talk about it back and forth. You're probably not going to change anything, but at least you've had an airing of grievances. And the guys who are vaccinated, and in Patrick Peterson's case, maybe he didn't really want to get the vaccine, but he got it because he said, it was a team thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then he can, bring that out. And at least they've had a discussion about the why and the why's not. And that's out there, and then the players who are unvaccinated, or the leaders of the teams and the ones who are vaccinated can say, okay, you're not going to get vaccinated. We feel that this puts our team at a competitive disadvantage, so we're going to hold you accountable for doing all the other things that need to be done with the protocols, so that you do everything you can not to get infected with COVID or be a close contact.
From what I gather, that those discussions have taken place, and that the team is on board with the players on which everybody's stance is, and they agree they're going as one team, but they understand everybody's stance, and they're going to try to make everything work out. It's just that you're leaving so much greater of a chance for things to go wrong, in my opinion, with the ones that don't. But as a team, the players are saying they're cool with it and they're going to press on.
I think that's all that can be done at this point. If certain individuals won't get vaccinated for whatever those reasons are, right? And apparently for Cousins, it's religious reasons. You'd mentioned that. And I don't know what.
It's not political, it's religious on the
Yeah. Well, yeah. So if the team has had that discussion, they've hashed things out, they've come to an understanding about each other's points of view and what people are going to do to protect themselves. Nobody asks to get COVID when you get it. It's not anybody's fault in that way, even if you do have the opportunity to get vaccinated. So I think that in that case, I feel good about it because it shows that the team, and this is something that I'm not all that sure about, is what kind of team culture do the Vikings have? You hear a lot about team culture for teams that win a lot. Like every team that Brady's on has got a great team culture, right? If you're a sucky team, your team culture must suck as well.
Well,
I don't know.
New York Giants. Your team culture must suck if you got 4 players that suddenly I'm retiring.
So they come to this understanding. I get the test of it will be if this happens during the regular season with key players and how the team reacts to that. And the other thing about this is that we don't know amongst on the outside looking in how much of a big deal this is, or how much of a schism it is, or how much of it could fracturing it could be. These are stories that have been put out by it's legitimate stories for the media to cover, but they're the ones writing it. We don't know if that has any effect on the players at all, and they're the ones that go on the field and perform, and they're the ones that are with these guys day in and day out. If they're okay with the way things are, and it sounds like they are, then I don't think it's going to be a big issue. But as always, when the season starts going south, suddenly things that weren't issues become issues.
Bada big, baby. You got it right.
And it's still not good if Kirk Cousins, for all his faults and all that you and I sometimes have our problems with him, overall, he's a pretty good player, pretty good quarterback. With him, if he's not in the lineup for the Vikings because he got COVID or he's a close contact due to the unvaccinated thing, that's a major, major competitive disadvantage for the Vikings in any game they play.
Yeah, Viking Jerome mentioned Jake Browning. I'm impressed with Jake Browning so far. I think he's locked up the QB2 slot. I think with the team we have right now as a QB2, if he had to come in, he could win half the games. And that's what you want as a backup. But
that's the other thing about
to win the division, you need to win more than half.
I guess the a bit of the silver lining on this, Dave, with that is that Browning, who we had no idea what he brought to the table, has had like a week plus of getting major reps with a lot of guys that normally he wouldn't get to have reps with, and he's probably going to play a lot in the preseason games. Again, Mon's been out, so he's probably not going to play at all next Saturday, which means it's going to be Browning and Cousins, and probably mostly Browning, and we don't know about Nate Paul Stanley or Etling or
it'll be Etling and Stanley will finish it off.
Cook Crocus. It's Cookus, but anyway.
Cookus left. They had him for the 3 or 4 days, and they said, thank you for coming in and handing off, and we're done with you. Bye.
Yeah, well, they did. I wonder what he got paid for doing that.
He had to get paid something. There's stuff written in the CBA where he got some money. And I want to say it was $70,000, but I don't know. Hey,
70.
It's experience. He put it on his resume.
Sign me up for that, Dave. 70 grand American.
I'll throw a football and hand off.
Yeah. They're not even going to tackle me. I'll be good. But yeah, that's that's the situation we got. Again, I'm good with the situation is not ideal, but if the team has addressed it internally, at least that's a good start to things. The issue is, of course, like you say, with a lot of the public stuff coming down on Kirk, and we know, or we believe anyway, that he's not the most mentally tough athlete out there. That when things start getting not perfect, when there's a lot of stuff going on either on the field or perhaps off the field, the concern is that he's going to crack under that. So this is not a very I would say this is an unwanted distraction for him, one that is of his own making, and he's going to have to hope that it blows away. And I guess if this is going to happen, better to happen in the preseason when nothing really counts.
Exactly. And if they go through, like you said, winning solves everything. If we go through and have a marvelous season, this won't be brought up again.
It won't.
Hope that's the case. And Viking Jerome, you're 61, I'm 57. We all agree. Let's win one. Like I said, this
win one for the Gipper.
This is the 61st season of the Minnesota Vikings. So let it be magical.
Haven't been to a Super Bowl in almost 50.
Since 1974?
76.
76. So
yeah, been a while.
Yeah, a little bit. I was a kid then. Jerome was
so was I.
Then. And it's just, let's do it. Speaking of games, we have one coming up. The Denver Broncos, which I was looking forward to when I was living there before moving to Austin, looking forward to seeing all the reporting on their team, are coming to town. They're going to be here early so they can do a joint scrimmage. But then on Saturday at 3 o'clock Central in the afternoon, we have preseason game 1, where the Broncos are at the Minnesota Vikings. What do you think of that?
I love it. Even if it's going to be like potentially 4 quarters of the most boring football you've watched in 8 months, but it's still NFL football. It's always exciting to see them get out there, see the team. We haven't watched the Vikings since January when they beat the Lions. So it's just at that point you really feel like the NFL season is here. When for me anyway, when the preseason gets started, and a couple of key things is that there's fans in the stands, right?
Yes.
They're going to be So first time the Vikings and
hopefully
will
it
be
stays
playing
that way.
Yeah, the first time the Vikings have played in front of fans in well over in a long time. So this is a good little, it's at home, so that's a little bit different. But it's going to be a different atmosphere than last year when they played all the games and there was just canned noise coming in. So there's that. Also, just interested because this will be Clint Kubiak's first time calling plays in a real sort of a real game. And I'm interested. We preseason they aren't going to show a whole lot, but again, a good opportunity for him to get his feet wet on that aspect of things. And we might get a little indication of what the Vikings are going to be doing on offense that might be different with Clint than it was with Gary. So interested to see about that, because it's very important that we have an OC who knows what he's doing. And there's still questions about, the Clint Jr., Kubiak Jr., and how effective he's going to be in that position. That's another thing. And always just for me is just to see what new players, which ones flash. Going to be a bit disappointed because Darrisaw likely won't be playing, but Wyatt Davis is starting to get in the mix now, which was, and he's apparently I saw a couple of tweets that mentioned that he looked pretty decent at the most recent practice. Interested to see guys like Patrick Jones, Janarius Robinson, Chaz Surratt. These guys, how are they going to be in the mix? How are they going to look? Particularly when we aren't really sure on the defensive end who's going to be providing the juice other than Daniil Hunter. Well, it'd be really nice if Jones or Robinson kind of showed a little something on that end of things. It'd be nice if Surratt shows that he's a factor for that third linebacker spot, even though that third linebacker doesn't play a whole lot, but they do play. And I'd like that third guy to play, whether it be Vigil or Surratt or somebody else, Cam Smith. I don't know who's it going to be. If they show that they can make some plays when they're in the game. And I'll be... and on the other end, Cameron Bynum, another guy. Safety depth is an issue. He's a guy that they've drafted to be, I think a guy drafted to play the safety position, even though he's a corner at Cal his whole career. What can he bring to the table? So a lot of things. And then again,
interesting things about him in camp. I don't know if you've seen that he is doing well and may beat out Metellus for the backups spot on the roster,
which wouldn't take much doing, but that's fine. And Jim, I did see the Wanham pick six. Was on the highlights. Very, very nice. Wanham looked like he could be a tight end, the way he grabbed that thing and started running. So there's that, and so the secondary in general will be something I'll be really looking forward to seeing. I don't know how much, a lot of the guys, I don't expect Breeland, I don't expect Peterson to play very much, I don't expect Dantzler to play very much, but so that leaves guys like Harrison Hand, who I think is kind of a promising guy. I think he's going to get a lot of playing time, and I'll be interested to see how he fares in it. Another guy, Chris Boyd, not really, we don't expect him to be a factor, but can he step up at all? Guys like that, just people flashing. We didn't get a chance to have any preseason last year. There's always a guy, one or two guys in the preseason games where you think, hey, he's showing up. Eric Wilson was one of those guys 4 years ago. Now he's made some money and he's playing for Philly, but we drafted a lot of guys the last 2 years. It's time to see whether those guys, time to start seeing those guys show up a bit in preseason. James Lynch, what's going to happen with him? A lot of people are saying he's not going to make the roster. Here's the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year in 2019. What is he going to bring to the table? Lots of questions. Those are the not the starters, but the backups and the draftees are always the preseason. I'm always really excited to see what they will do, if anything. Amir Smith-Marsette, another guy, super fast. What can he do? A great kickoff returner. The running back whose last name I cannot pronounce. He's probably yeah, right, yeah.
Wangu. I think
he might get more. He might get more carries in preseason than he got all last year at Iowa State. He could be. There's another guy, like a super fast, underused. Did the Vikings get a guy like a Jerick McKinnon, who they've kind of missed since he left after 2017? They really need that third back who can catch the ball out of the backfield, do different things. Is Nwangu that kind of guy? All kinds of questions right now that we don't have answers to, that hopefully the preseason will provide maybe a little bit of answers to. That's
Mm-hmm.
what gets me. That's what gets me pumped up to watch these games.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm looking forward to it. Now, my question to the viewers is, do we see this more as, since they've gone down to 3 games, that's going to change how they evaluate players? The old system was generally game one, the first stringers played one drive, depending on how the drive went, and then they were out, right? And then in game two, you saw them play almost a full quarter, right? And game three, they play to the half and sometimes into the third quarter. How does reducing down to 3 games, do you think, is going to change the approach from teams, not just the Vikings in particular, because that's who we care about, but from all teams, as to how they play players in this preseason?
Yeah, and we touched on this briefly the last week, like what they were going to do with 3 instead of 4. Does that mean the starters play a little bit more than normal because you don't, or because you have a 17th regular season game with more banging and crashing, an extra 60 minutes of hard football that your starters are going to have to play that they didn't have to play in the previous? Does that mean that teams are kind of like, we need to give them as much rest as possible? That's going to be, to me, that's going to be a real interesting way to see how teams handle it, and every teams are going to handle it differently, depending on who the coach is, how comfortable they feel with the starters being able to just walk right into regular season with minimal, real live action reps and all of that. And I think perhaps Zimmer, with having this joint practice going on with the Broncos, maybe he's going to lean towards the former, which is don't play the starters very much at all in the preseason, and let a lot of the rookies and backups get as many reps as they can in, because he feels comfortable the starters that he have, the veterans that he have, can hit the ground running in that first game against the Bengals. Mm-hmm. But not every team is going to take that approach, and I think quarterback wise, I don't think that the Vikings, they probably don't have a lot of, like, I feel like a guy like Cousins who's been in the league a while and has played a lot. I don't really think that he needs a whole lot of playing time in preseason to get going in the regular season, especially in an offense that's pretty much been the same for the past 3 years.
They've added little twists. Clint is already adding stuff.
Yeah, and that's fine. But he's already got he's got the base
more
down,
modernized,
right?
Yeah, but he's got the base down. Yes, exactly.
So yeah, I mean, you're adding those little things that'll be. I don't want to see the starters much, Jim says. Yeah. I'm kind of with you on that one. I'm kind of with you on that one. I mean, if Cook doesn't get a carry the whole preseason, I'm like, good, because he had about 700 carries last year. The guy could use a break.
And he's going to get quite a few this year.
Yeah, he's probably going to get about 650 this year. So hey, I'm okay. He looks good in training camp, so I'm fine with him.
Yep, and we'll get more Wang Chung, Kene Wangu, and
I don't really think Madison needs a whole lot of work either. Like and you don't want him getting hurt, because Cook has had an injury history, and if he's out for any length of time, you're expecting Matty to get in there and to do like he did against Detroit, and then give a good, solid workmanlike effort. Actually, it was much better than that. He was outstanding in that game, even if he's not the same back, but very effective back.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting to see some of the older fringe veterans like Amir Abdullah, how they'll do, because they've got Kene Wangu breathing up their tails. And I find that whole the battles for positions and how they do, who stands up, who's the game time player, right? You have guys that can do great in practice and then absolutely suck during games. But you have guys that can, vice versa, absolutely not be great in practice, but during games, it's like lighting a light switch and they become somebody totally different. Those storylines are some that we're looking forward to this preseason starting Saturday.
Yeah, I think, and I forgot to mention, Jake Browning again. Like
Hmm.
if I'll be now that I'll be interested to see if what he did in practices the past week or so, if that translates into the game time
In,
action
in the game
preseason.
time. Yep.
Because he right now he's likely your backup QB. So it'd be very nice if he went in there and he showed that he was proficient, efficient, and actually can get lead the team effectively when he's in there, no matter who he's got playing with him. And that way, I'd feel a little bit better about the Vikings' backup quarterback position because right now. I think most of us are not feeling all that great about it. With the only saving grace is that Cousins never gets injured.
Knock
Knock
on
on wood.
wood.
Yeah.
We'll see. So, any last words? Let's wrap this puppy up.
No, I think again this time next week we will have seen a preseason game and we'll have actually football stuff to talk about and hopefully all this Kirk and COVID and injury wussy type stuff will not be an issue. We'll actually have this guy flashed. The Vikings looked run defense looked really stout throughout the game. We'll have those things to discuss, which is a lot more enjoyable for me than to talk about some of the stuff we talked about today,
Hmm. And
which was enjoyable too. But
and we're the
but
first
yeah,
scheduled show after the game. I think we will be doing a post game show
boom.
for Climbing the Pocket Network. It'll be a brand new one. There's no more GMG in the Raw for obvious reasons. I wish Ted, Drew, and Chris all success on their show. But Climbing the Pocket will also be going live after the show to do a post game. But then the next day, once we've recovered from our hangovers and thought about it and researched everything, you have me and Darren. That's right.
Woo,
Two old bloggers to go over to football. And hopefully it's a good one. For everybody out there, have a great remainder of your day. And as always, Skol Vikings!
Let's go Vikings. Thanks everybody.
Thank you for watching or listening. As always, if you like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications. And if you're listening to the podcast, please rate us on your favorite aggregator. Skol, everybody.